listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the Awards Watch Podcast, episode 250. I'm your executive editor, Ryan McQuade, and joining me today is our Editor-In-Chief, Erik Anderson.
Hello from the mountain.
Our associate editor, Sophia Ciminello.
Hi, everyone.
And our special guest returning from our last Telluride conversation, Christina Birro of Pop Culture Confidential.
Hello, roomies.
We are here to talk about the Telluride Film Festival. So much to get into, so many movies that we were able to see, so many events that happened. It's officially the start of awards season and festival season. Obviously, I think we'll talk about maybe next week, or if Erik wants to mention a little bit too, some stuff that's going on in Venice right now. There's been a lot of premieres, a lot of great things that have been happening. Obviously, those things will start playing out at TIFF in New York and upcoming festivals. But we're here to just talk about the films that were mostly what we saw here at the Telluride Film Festival. But first, and before I get into any general ideas, I want to kick it back over to Christina real quick. I'm throwing a curveball to start off episode 250. Christina, before we talk about Telluride, there's a special thing that you were able to do that was the first time experience for yourself this weekend. How was going to the restaurant known as Chili's for yourself for the first time?
Oh my God. Well, I have to lay the whole foundation here.
Let's do it.
We met in the incredible city of Montrose, and where we all came together there. We landed in Montrose, and you guys said there's only one place we're taking you. I've been to most places, but I had never experienced a Chili's. So you were so gracious to bring me there, and I'll just say it was a lot.
That's good. I mean, we were going to have dinner at the ketamine restaurant, but we told Erik that's not a really good suggestion.
Ketamine and vaping really, really popular in Montrose, and we just didn't want to hit those kind of tourist spots.
I'm grateful for that.
Very popular also in the films at the Telluride Film Festival. References to ketamine and vaping.
That's actually 100% correct, Sophia.
Yes.
Shockingly didn't expect that. Honestly, there were like moments from the first day in Montrose, the Chili's experience, which I personally loved to see through Christina's eyes, her eat a Southwest egg roll and describe it to me as yuck. But
well, there goes our Chili sponsorship.
Yeah, I know.
Podcast.
We're sponsored by Applebee's.
Well, my chicken salad was tremendous. I loved it.
Yes, yeah, that's true. So we got through. Well, one also shout out to the upgraded Montrose Airport.
But can I say though, I have to just say in terms of restaurants that we, tradition wise, now it's the second year I'm with you guys to have our first dinner at the Chop House, where we have wonderful, glorious conversations. We get to personal stuff. We cry a bit. We anticipate movies. We laugh a lot, and that's an incredible experience. That's the first night when we get up here to the mountain.
Yeah, I gotta say the ride up here was my favorite one so far because I didn't have a blistering headache and almost want to pass out. Nor did our bus break down this year.
Yeah, our bus didn't break down. That was wonderful. A godsend.
That's a plus.
Yeah, that is a plus.
A working vehicle is always a good thing.
Yes, exactly. But we got here, we had that wonderful dinner, and then the next day we got it. Well, that night we actually got our passes. We started looking over the schedule. So the difference between this year's and last year's Telluride is it's back to normal. It's the 51st Telluride this year, so no more extra days. The head of the festival program, Julie Hutzinger, said we will no longer have an extra fourth day for a very, 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 very long time. And so we're back to how it used to be, cramming as many movies in about 3.5 days as possible. And
but the stars are back. The actors are back.
The actors were back. I mean, overall vibes, guys, for this weekend. Did it lead up to your expectations from what our previous conversation was, Erik?
I think we had a good slate of movies, and we can talk a little bit about what we thought was going to be here, or maybe could have and kind of had fun with in our
Oh
preview.
man, we had fun the night before the lineup came out. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, we were like, hey, maybe Nosferatu can show up, maybe
Mhm.
Queer will show up and totally shock and get snagged from Venice. But there were no surprises like in that way at all. So we had a pretty good idea of what the lineup was going to be. And it's good. Obviously, lots coming from Cannes, a lot of world premieres, but it does feel, or did feel, just a little different. I don't even know if I'm using different, complimentary or derogatory here, because I don't know. It didn't feel quite as Telluride as before. And for a year that returned from the strike, there were major world premieres that had no cast members, and that was surprising. And these
Yeah.
are these are films that definitely needed that a little bit as a boost, and also just some strange places to have a world premiere here that feel like maybe they would have fit better as a first jumping off point at another festival.
Yeah. What was interesting to me was that this was my first back to normal Telluride, because my very first Telluride was last year during the strike. So I think I expected a much bigger swing into something different. And I was surprised at how similar it felt, just in terms of running into people or the general vibe of the festival. Now, I mean, it's amazing to be walking down the street and all of a sudden you see Naomi Watts, or to see Selena Gomez and Zoe Saldana and everyone from Emilia Perez on stage. Like, that's fun and that's different and something that we didn't have during the strike, but it did feel much more low key, I think, than I expected when I first thought, like back last year when I decided to come to Telluride again. So I thought it was interesting to even, at the festival, people were already talking about next year's lineup and the movies we might get next year. So this did kind of feel like an odd in between lineup. And I think we also just worked ourselves up a little bit because we got those announcements about, Queer getting distribution with A24 and Maria with Netflix. And then that Nosferatu little rumor about its random film festival placement. And I had this whole theory, of course, worked, out, that because Werner Herzog made an adaptation of Nosferatu, that we would get that here. That, of course, was sadly incorrect, but I still had a great time. I think I just expected it to feel much different than last year, and it didn't.
Christina?
I mean, for me, Telluride is the movies, those incredible conversations that we have when we're in line with each other, but also with other people, and it feels like a big family. For me, it was incredible because everyone was back. I listened to so many incredible Q&As afterwards. I cried at least 6 of the movies, and I'm a big crier, but I felt there was an incredible lineup. There was really only one that I really didn't like and at all, and the rest, there were many surprises for me. So I just love it. It's a beautiful environment, and it just feels very, very friendly and easy. So I'm very happy with the experience, and I have the same experience with Sophia because I was also here last year when the strikes were. So this is my first sort of back to normal.
Yeah, I guess for myself, I mean, my first year was a normal year in the 49th. And so, but I remember that being a really big year of titles. Obviously it felt like there seemed to be better, I wouldn't say, well, maybe better is a wrong word, but didn't seem to be so much animosity between Venice and between Telluride in terms of placements of when films can premiere to then come over here. It's starting to seem that is becoming less and less the case. And at least for now, because obviously Christina's pointed this out, that there's going to be a political change in Italy, and that is definitely going to affect that festival going forward. But I do also think that the fact that, Telluride was pretty great last year, and Venice and especially Toronto, as we talked about in the past, suffered. And I think that there was a lot of deals back to, those festivals about having the stars there this year post-strike. And I think that might just be a 1-year deal, and like to go kind of put all the chips in the middle of the table, like Cameron Bailey and Barbera did over at Venice. So I think next year, even though it was, I do agree to Sophia's point, a little silly to be like already looking at next year, even though we hadn't screened a single film yet at this festival. I do think that next year will, not just in terms of the film slate, but in terms of the maybe the availability of people. I'm more optimistic about next year just because you don't have those excuses. But if this trend does continue into next year, that's going to be an issue going forward, I think, for the festival. But again, I think things change. And every year there's one fest that seems to gets the short change. You know, 1 year it's Venice. Last year, obviously, it was Toronto. And this year it's Telluride. But there was still a lot of great stuff that did premiere. A lot of exciting world premieres. We were very spot on, even though we were very much like frantically hoping and praying and getting out the candles and getting in a circle the night before. We really wanted to, say that we were watching Nosferatu before everybody else, because who wouldn't want to see that movie? Because it's definitely a movie up our alley. Or even Queer, because that's another film that's very much like one of our most anticipated films of the year for this group. But we did get, a lot of the films that we're going to discuss here that were mentioned on that previous show. And I think it's just the best way to jump right into those. Our first film was Conclave, and it was Edward Berger's follow-up, and to All Quiet on the Western Front. And I think, no, all three of us had read the book, right?
Yeah.
Erik, you did not read the book.
I did not.
Eric's like, books don't have time for you.
You saved a lot of time.
Yes.
Doing that, I think.
I knew the ending, so that's all I
Exactly.
needed to know.
And so that is one of those films that Erik mentioned where the cast was not here, but director Berger was. Very nice introduction to the film. I'm going to kick it over to Sophia to start. I know you weren't a big fan of All Quiet on the Western Front, his adaptation of that, the Oscar-winning adaptation from a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, it's in the notes.
It's fine.
What did you think of Conclave?
Well, it's funny because I actually have pretty similar opinions about All Quiet on the Western Front and Conclave in terms of the problems that I have with both of these films. Mostly, the dramatic scenes and the tension in those is pretty minimal to me. And that was the fear that I had going into Conclave, and definitely something that held up. Additionally, Volker Bertelmann's score, it's almost a joke how I, complain about that win and beating Justin Hurwitz's Babylon score that year. And, this, he put in more than 3 notes, but it was a very, I think, just loud and abrasive score that really overtook a lot of the moments I think that were supposed to be a bit quieter. I thought,
but also wanted to just interrupt you for a second about the music, also to sort of give a thriller aspect to scenes that did not have that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone's walking up the stairs, very dramatic music.
Yeah, right. It didn't trust the audience in that way, I think. But, performance wise, I really liked Stanley Tucci. I think that he was the standout of those supporting actors. And even I think compared to Ralph Fiennes, who I did enjoy in the movie as well. I wish that Isabella Rossellini had more to do, but she does make a meal out of what is given to her. And I think that the movie, if you view it as a comedy, which it's not trying to be, it's a fun experience. Like, I did have a lot of fun watching it, seeing these cardinals scheme and Ralph Fiennes basically eliminate them from the process one by one. That was very fun. It reminded me of some of my favorite reality TV.
Not what you would expect, though, in an Oscar contender.
But this, to me, and we'll get to this, I'm sure you guys think the same, but it still has major Oscar player written all over it.
Christina?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because the three of us had read the book,
yes.
And it felt like an airport novel. And I have to say that I felt that the adaptation is better than the book, but it's still feels like it's kind of silly, but that doesn't mean it's not very, very entertaining, as ditto what Sophia was saying about, the aspects of electing a pope, some of the humoristic, how things happen. I don't want to spoil anything. That's why I'm being careful. How things happen can seem a little silly, but also very entertaining. And the Isabella Rossellini thing really worried us because we knew she was hardly in the book. She basically has one line, how many copies do you need? Which didn't feel very grand for La Rossellini. But as Sophia was saying, she really made something out of this role and also was very needed in it because she brought some sort of satire and humor to it that I really appreciated. I do feel that the story kind of lets the church off the hook in a way that we've been discussing, that I have some issues with. But all in all, it was very entertaining. I'm a bit surprised that the immense love for it, that was really huge. The reviews out of it were incredibly positive. And I am absolutely positive that it's going to be an Oscar player. I think Ralph Fiennes is really up for an Oscar, and he's tortured throughout the film and does it very well. So I think that he's going to be a huge conversation going forward.
Erik?
Yeah, I will largely echo that. I think Bertelmann's score is an absolute crime. It was horrible. And to Christina's point, it would be so aggressive in scenes so absolutely unneeded, when there were elements of the score that had just very small violins and just little plink plink plinks that would kind of get you there. And that's exactly what this story needed. It did not need thundering booms of war, because that's just, no, it was awful. Yeah, and it was trying to really kind of amp up more than it was. There were some things I liked about it. It had punctuated humor that was really good. And then, at least from the audience response of that premiere night, one moment that caused unintentional laughter. And so in my brief comments, I really do wonder what a general audience will feel about that moment, and how they will react to it, because it is an awkward moment for the story. But yeah, and also, like Sophia said, it felt like Survivor and Drag Race All Stars. And I know that sounds like a crazy comparison, but when you see it, then it will all make sense, because it really is about these goddamn queens trying to outdo each other for the crown. It is literally that. So yeah, this is Drag Race Vatican.
And I think a lot of people have really appreciated that this election year, that this is bringing a lot of conversation to that, and comparing it to American politics in every which way. And I think that's going to be a very big selling point for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, they make a direct, there's a direct line in it to American politics that's
Yeah.
so wink wink.
There's multiple lines in the film that are right to it. Yeah, I mean, I wrote the review for it is up on the site. I wrote the review. As they started putting it together, it started to more and more fall apart. And I did read the book. I do agree with Christina. The movie's better than the book. That's not saying much, because the book's a pretty middle of the road novel. And I will say this: the movie is intriguing enough to keep you interested, even if you know what's about to happen, because the book is so flatly written, that it would put you into airplane mode if you were reading that airport novel. You know what I'm saying? But I do agree. I liked Ralph Fiennes' performance a lot. I think the best performance in the film is Stanley Tucci. I think John Lithgow is non-existent. Like everyone was a lot of people had him in predictions and stuff, and it almost at times feels like a cameo. Isabella Rossellini, felt so bad for her. Just from the book, just from this. I mean, the way in which she delivers her line from the book, the way she kind of just moves into the frame, it's very like, you guys remember in Elvis when Tom Hanks,
Oh, dear.
Elvis is crying in his mom's closet, and you just see like, Colonel Tom Parker kind of just slide right into the frame like that. That's kind of what it almost felt like for me in that moment. And how many copies do you want? There's some great moments of humor, and there probably should have been more, honestly. The movie kind of takes itself way too serious at times, and needed to fix a third act in the book that was wild and kind of unnecessary, like it didn't fit. And it still doesn't fit here, and it doesn't fully explain itself. I do agree with Erik. Like there was laughter towards the end of that film, whether that's intentional or not. And then obviously, from the filmmaker's perspective, it is not supposed to be taken as a form of comedy. I will be very curious to see how it plays at TIFF and how it plays at the regional festivals. I do agree with you guys. I think it's going to be a hit amongst a certain demographic in the Academy. Whether it's a big enough hit to be a big player or a big winner, remains to be seen. But yeah, I was kind of just like, all right, it's Conclave. And that score, he listened to, I think what was the guy, Volker what?
Bertelman.
Yes, because Sophia has a death warrant out for him. That's how she knows the name. I think that he listened to every podcast, read every review, and just completely doubled down from the criticisms from that score, because it's literally within the first 30 seconds. I kid you not. And it is so abrasive, and it is so, you can't even hear the dialogue in those moments and it's important stuff because it's literally the beginning of the film, setting up what we're about to see. And it's just boom, 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 and then a little bit of strings and boom, 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 boom. And it's like after every other sentence. And
That
so,
sounded better than the score.
you're welcome. I'm actually, maybe I should get into composing. You ever think about that?
There you go.
But yeah, mostly mixed reaction from us. A lot of people did like it though. All right, let's do Nickel Boys. Sophia, you wrote the review. It's up on the site right now.
Mhm.
I know you had a really great experience watching this film. You kind of explain your thoughts on the Nickel Boys and what you loved about it so much.
Yeah, of course. So Nickel Boys is Ramel Ross's narrative feature directorial debut, first narrative feature. Those who know the masterpiece that is Hale County This Morning, This Evening and love that will be very excited, I think, to know that he stays with that sort of bold visual style in this literary adaptation. And that's a really bold choice. This is, of course, based on the Nickel Boys, which is a Pulitzer Prize winning novel by Colson Whitehead. And it follows these boys at Nickel Academy, which is a really abusive reform school in Florida, focuses on two boys mainly and their relationship, Elwood and Turner. And what Ramel Ross does here is he keeps everything in first person point of view. And I loved it so much because I thought it was a really creative way to think about adaptation and how essential adaptation is, especially I think when telling the stories of racial abuse and of what these Black boys experienced growing up in this, horrible, horrible environment. And to, be that strong in your vision and carry that out, I think it gave even more emotional heft to the text and was just a really inventive way to think about it. And there are images in this movie that I will never forget. The cinematography is absolutely breathtaking, and getting to experience those images from the perspective of either Elwood or Turner, when the perspective switches, it gives even more gravitas and weight to the story. So yeah, I'm a major fan of this. One of my favorite movies of the year so far. One of my favorites of the fest. And yeah, I wrote a review up on the site, gave it a big shining A.
Yep. Who wants to go next? Eric, you want to go?
Sure.
Oh,
I
we ran out of time. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to
Oh,
go
and
first.
good night, everybody.
Um,
I'm thinking that for me, this is going to be the movie of the year. Um, we use audacious really quite a bit. Sometimes it's not always worthy. It's absolutely brave what Ramel Ross does with that POV that Sophia was talking about. Because in the first moments, first minutes, when we are looking at it first person, it feels, oh, okay, this is kind of a cute gimmick, and we're gonna break from it soon. And it doesn't break from that. And I was actually so relieved when I realized that it wasn't going to do that. Because like Ross said in the Q&A afterwards, there is cinema and photography is the technology of racism, because these stories are told about people of color by not people of color. So by putting us in a literal POV, that's where we are. We don't have a choice from it, and we are both locked into it, and given an enormous opportunity to see it. I was stunned at every single minute of this. I think the young men that play the leads, Ethan Harris and Brandon Wilson, are absolutely extraordinary. Jomo Frey's cinematography, that 133 ratio, perfect. Love. I couldn't possibly love this anymore, I don't think.
Christina?
Oh, I think it's astounding. So I'm like what you say. I think that it's really visionary storytelling, all the POV that you guys are talking about, as well as the use of archival material. And what he does with this storytelling makes it both beautiful and totally devastating at the same time. But talking to people in lines about the ones that didn't like it, it very much feels like you have to, it's a sensory experience, and you have to feel that right from the beginning. And if it catches you, that wave of getting into this POV, then I think it will bring you all the way into the end. But I feel that it's difficult for some, and I understand that it's a very specific type of storytelling that won't appeal to everyone. So I understand that it could be difficult, but if it does get you, do not, you won't regret seeing it. It's such an emotional experience. I also want to shout out Anjanou Ellis-Taylor, who plays the grandmother and is astounding. She just anchors this film so beautifully. And so for me, as well, one of my absolute favorites of the fest.
Yeah, it's such a bold swing. We have two films here this year from first-time feature filmmakers that were documentarians, in Ramel Ross and Joshua Oppenheimer, and we'll talk about the end here in a little bit. The thing about the Q&A that was the worrisome for a lot of people of the book when Ramel Ross signed on to this is when you do watch Hell County, has such a distinct visual language as a documentarian, to don't go to a celebrated book like this, you could lose that. And that's not what Dee Dee Gardner, the producer, wanted at all. She was like, that's what we need for this story. And it was purposeful. I'm not as high on it as everyone else here. I still think, though, it is a beautiful film, and it's one that's lingered, and it's got that lingering quality to it, that I think will carry throughout the year. It's like Sophia said, so much imagery and so many choices. It's such an audacious way to tackle a novel like this and look at generational trauma and the look of through the eyes of these two Black boys, and do it in such a delicate, elegant way of doing it. I mean, I was thinking a lot of If Beale Street Could Talk. I was thinking a lot of another movie that came out last year, All Dirt Roast Taste of Salt, and which has the same cinematographer. And I was thinking about there's specific flash forward sequences in the film too that reminded me a little bit of After Sun. And so there were all these things that were sort of flashing in my head, but then that's, I think the point is it's about memory and it's about images and what you bring in and what you're going to take out of it. It's going to be in New York. It's the opening night film in the New York Film Festival. I think we've all talked. We think it's going to do really well there. How it does throughout the rest of the season, I think it will be up to how people handle that POV perspective, because it is unlike pretty much anything you're going to see this year. For some people that would be better, and for others that could be for worse. So, but yes, it was a glowing review up on the website. Absolutely great job by Sophia. So I highly recommend going and reading it once the film comes out, or if you just want to, if you've already read the book, then you can go ahead and read it too and get anticipated for that film. All right. Next film is Malcolm Washington's The Piano Lesson, which is the highly anticipated directorial debut based off the Pulitzer Prize winning August Wilson play. Christina, I'm going to kick this over to you. The Washington family minus Denzel, we're all here. Denzel Washington is the producer, but Malcolm Washington, his brother John David is in the film. I believe their sister is also in the film too. And also stars Daniel Detweiler, Corey Hawkins, Ray Fisher, and Samuel L. Jackson, who we thought was going to be getting a tribute, but he did not get a tribute. He was not here at the festival. By the way, those tributes, if we want to talk about them real quick, because we kind of expected them to maybe be Angelina Jolie and Sam Jackson. And I believe we did kind of think about Jacques Audiard as a potential for that. Jacques Audiard did get one medallion, and the other medallion went to Saoirse Ronan for the Outrun, which is a film that Sophia can talk about here in a little bit. She was, I think, the only one to see it this weekend from us. And then Thelma Schoonmaker, the acclaimed collaborator with Martin Scorsese. She had a documentary out here. It was the Bound Pressburger documentary, but it was really just a retrospect to look back on her life and the legendary work that she's done. But anyway, Piano Lesson. I think some of us were anticipated for this. It had a trailer that premiered right before, and it looked good. So, but we've been a little bit mixed on August Wilson adaptations in the past. Christina, for yourself, what did you think of Malcolm Washington's debut?
I'm really impressed with his first directorial debut. I think we're going to see a lot of Malcolm going forward, and I'm really looking forward to it. This is my favorite of the August Wilson adaptations, including Fences and Ma Rainey. And the reason for that is I don't mind the sort of stagey theatrical parts. I know a lot of people who don't like that. It is stagey and theatrical, but I find the actors and the ensemble so amazing that I go with it, and I really think that it works. But this one has particularly beautiful elements of magical realism, and the end is gripped me very, very much, and it's in the hands of Danielle Deadwyler, who I think is phenomenal in this movie. You guys are a bit disappointed with Sam Jackson's, at least his role. I thought I had a great time with him the whole time through. I think he's a good anchor to this. And there's a particular scene in the movie between the men where they do a work song that is, I would say, my favorite scene in a movie of the entire festival. That was just amazing. So in terms of just one particular scene, that was so gripping. So I liked it. It's not my favorite of the fest, but I'm impressed with it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too. I was genuinely surprised by it. I agree with you. Daniel Detweiler is the real reason to see this movie. Also, Corey Hawkins and Ray Fisher. Ray Fisher was absolutely fantastic in this movie, and Sophia, on your show, you're going to be doing Smash or Pass later this year. We're going to be talking about Ray Fisher, Smash or Pass from this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
But I just thought, from an adaptation of August Wilson, we haven't seen a movie, I think, with this kind of visual scope before, and feels so haunting and deeply ancestral at times. I felt the urgency of this more. There is the stagey aspects that's kind of hard not to, but I think he understood the urgency here, and I really did enjoy it. I was disappointed in the amount of screen time from Sam Jackson, but that is also, I have to go back to the text and look at it, but that's also the character. I don't know how that'll play for him later in the season. He will start making the runs to the festivals and stuff in about October. So I don't think he's out of it by any stretch.
Next year, we better see a full-length movie with Sam and Isabella.
Yes,
making
there
copies.
you go. Yes, to that point. No, I'd love to see that. But overall, I think it was a very, very good debut. And he won up Dad in adapting an August Wilson material. Sophia?
I think he did. It's also my favorite August Wilson adaptation. And that's because I think he did take really big creative swings, leaning into the magical realism, Christina, that you mentioned. And my favorite parts of the film were unpacking that haunting Southern Gothic quality that I think is really baked into the play, that you could see really, demonstrated really beautifully on screen. When it settles into those monologues, it feels like it's settling into them. It feels like that's the comfortable place for the film to be. And I wanted him to stretch more outside of it because we could see those pieces, right? We could see that potential there. And I wish that we didn't have as many of those monologues. And I think for me, John David Washington, his performance, I think, was playing to the rear mezzanine. It was like you were watching a stage performance, whereas I think Daniel Deadwyler, especially in the second half of the movie, really balanced that well. And I love a scene that she has that I won't spoil near the very end that I feel like could be her Oscar scene.
She has a couple.
Yeah, she has a couple really good ones. But overall, liked it. Didn't love it, but liked it more, I think, than I expected, given where I am on play adaptations in general. Usually.
Yeah. Christina, real quick.
But can I just say, even in real quick, even in the stagey scenes, there's one of the most romantic, beautiful scenes in there that he manages to get out even through a very staged theater-like scene. So I don't want to spoil that either, but so I think he did that well too.
Yeah. Erik, what about yourself?
Christina, are you talking about the perfume scene?
Yes.
Or something else? Because I don't think
the
that's
perfume scene.
I don't think it's really spoiled, but I don't think that was very stagey at all. I thought that was.
Oh, you did?
I thought you were talking about more of the Corey Hawkins scene with her.
Yeah, I think the
Daniel
earlier third of the movie has more of the monologue driven kind of things, and there's an intimacy in that perfume scene that is so physically close that's how you really kind of escape staginess, because you could never be that close to a person. You're not just watching this square box of things happening. Yeah, that scene is absolutely exquisite. Yeah, I also like this as the best of the three newest adaptations of his work, and that's not that it's a low bar, but it's kind of, because the previous ones just weren't.
They're more stagey than this.
They weren't as adventurous. And I talked to Malcolm Washington this weekend really specifically about that, and he's 33 years old, and he said, I wanted to make something that people of my generation or younger would want to see, outside of the idea, oh, why would I go and watch a staged play? So he really actively wanted to play with expectation, and does so many times. And I agree with Sophia, when it does really lean into the religious and supernatural and Gothic elements, I think it is the most successful. But it's also, again, it's the only one that really, of those three, that does that. So I am in a little bit of awe that somebody of a family dynasty as his and a first film has done that. And we talked about working with Leslie Jones, the editor, who's done tons of Paul Thomas Anderson and Dead Red Line, and the cinematographer who did Us. You're talking then about somebody who is clearly willing to go outside of the box of what a play adaptation can be. And it's, yeah, that's where it's really the most successful.
Yeah.
And Ray Fisher is incredibly hot. Daniel Deadweiler and I talked for 5 minutes purely and only about how hot Ray Fisher is, and was wearing shirts that were just a little bit too small.
And shoes too.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's not a size 9, guys. Come on.
he's not a size 9.
Yes. And I mean, Erik, just real quick, ask you, I mean, a lot of people have Deadweiler as their number 1 going into this, before this premiere, for supporting actress. I mean, we're going to talk about Emilia Perez here shortly, but I think Deadweiler has, like Sophia says, those scenes, and feels like the heartbeat of that film. It feels very much like what everyone has been wanting since Till, for her to have a nomination, and this could also potentially be a win for her too.
Well, I mean, she's obviously in that conversation.
Yeah.
I wasn't as high on Till as most were.
Yeah, it was that.
And even in Piano Lesson, I do think that she has moments in the first section that are just a little too, also a little too stagey. And she has to break out of that herself too, and she does later. When the movie allows her to break out of that staginess, she's ready for it.
Yeah. And she's truly magnificent, I think, in that second half of the film. Okay. The end. Joshua Oppenheimer.
What if we had ended the podcast with the end and that was it? We were
Yeah,
done.
you know what? And then that's it. And then we
You
never
have to
do
sing.
it.
You have
and
to
then we-
sing though.
Yeah, and then we never do another episode. No. Joshua Oppenheimer's feature film or narrative debut as a director, starring Tilda Swinton, Moses Ingram, Michael Shannon, George Mackay, about a movie about a family who's living in a bunker when it's past the end of the world, and they're responsible for it, essentially. And a newcomer comes in, and Moses Ingram, and that's all I'm really going to talk about in terms of plot, because I think audiences should kind of go into this as maybe blind as possible. It also is a musical. It's continuing the theme of musicals at this festival and of the year. But I'm going to start on this one. This might be my favorite film of the festival. I really loved it. I thought it, I'm someone that loves these big, bold, audacious swings. And I think that this is the biggest one. It's messy in all the right ways for me. It felt weirdly that I connected with these insanely unlikable, nasty characters throughout. I feel at times, while the music can be repetitive, I found it still really emotional. I thought the performances are a little rough around the edges, but I think that's, I know this is a phrase that's terrible, but I thought that was kind of the point. It's a very interesting film that I want to watch again because I could just feel like there's more to pick up. Obviously, listening to that music, the world building and production design of that movie is insane. I think the cinematography is fantastic. And I do think that all of those 4 performers that I mentioned give fantastic performances. I mean, it was one of my more anticipated films from the and debuts of the fest, and it didn't disappoint for me, but I know that it did for others. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sophia to talk about maybe that disappointment.
Okay, yeah, so I think Ryan every year now is morally obligated to like a film if it includes the word Oppenheimer somewhere in the title or the credits. So that might, just had to make that little joke. But I think that I
like good movies. I'm sorry.
I was really looking forward to this, and it was my most anticipated of the festival because I love really weird out there movies. I do love a golden age musical, which is what this is marketed as, and what Oppenheimer says it is. I do not believe it is. That's another issue I think I have with the movie, is that I don't find it to be one. I think it reaches for it, and I think it touches aspects of it, and it might be that family's idea of a golden age musical at the end of the world, but it's not actually that when you get down to it. I think that for me, I loved George Mackay in this. I thought he was great. I thought his songs, I really liked all of those. And, in Moses Ingram, when her character shows up as this unexpected visitor, and we learn more about her character and also how specifically Tilda Swinton's character feels about her and having strangers in the house. I loved those moments. And I think that she also, Moses Ingram, really shown through here with her voice and her performance. The production design by Jess Goncher I also loved. And there were a couple of really fleeting, beautiful moments for me, but it never, I think, coalesced into something greater that I was really hoping for. And I am an Annette stan. I gave that movie 5 stars when I saw it. So I think I was really hoping for something that clicked together a bit more for me here, just in terms of vision and music. I think the music, it reminded me a lot of Wonka, actually, and I can't think of any of the songs now, and that's something I need from a musical. I need to be able to cling on to at least one song and have it stuck in my head after, and be wanting to visit a soundtrack, and that just didn't happen here. But I want to mention that one of the people who worked on the music for this film, his name is Marius de Vries, maybe de Vries if I'm mispronouncing that, but he has a wild career as a music producer, working with artists like Bjork and Madonna and David Bowie. He was Grammy nominated for Album of the Year for Ray of Light, which is just, Eric and I had a moment about that yesterday, just couldn't believe. But he also has worked on films, everything from Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge and Romeo and Juliet to scoring Coda, the Best Picture winner Coda, if you're listening, Jay Ledbetter, and also executive music producer on Annette. So I could see the vibes there, but even more importantly, he worked on La La Land, which I could see little traces of La La Land, I think, in the music. But again, those songs, I think, while also not performed by traditionally, trained singers and Emma Stone, I could still, I think, the songs in La La Land hit me emotionally and were much more memorable to me than the songs in the end.
Eric?
Yeah, I may have to stop being really, really excited about things, because sometimes the fall from that disappointment is pretty huge. This was easily the thing I was looking forward to the most at Telluride, and it's the thing that disappointed me the most. And oddly, it started really wonderful because the music comes on almost immediately, and it's George Mackay, and he has his little song, and I got like little goosebumps. But then, yes, in retrospect, it sounded kind of like a Wonka song. And his other had sort of like a West Side Story vibe, but you could feel that La La Land influence more than anything else throughout. And I think there's like 20 songs in this. And you get to a point really after that all of the songs sound exactly the same. Their themes are exactly the same. And they became completely I could not really tell them apart. I did have a great reaction to Tilda Swinton's Mother song. I thought it was beautiful.
That's
But there
one of the
is
best scenes
such
of the
a
year.
it's a
Period.
beautiful scene. There is a very, I don't know, intentional or unintentional chasm between the vocal abilities of George Mackay and Moses Ingram versus Michael Shannon and Tilda Swinton. And it's kind of here where I'm generally pretty good about tone and intention. I could not figure out what the intention was of kind of mixing very, very good singers with bad singers. Tilda Swinton, I love her so much, is not a good singer, and that's kind of what it seemed like it was supposed to be, because we're sort of laughing at her. She has a high pitch that she can't really keep, um, and she's really in this weird place where it felt like Tilda Swinton pretending to be Tilda Swinton. There was something, it was a caricature of herself, but it didn't feel like that's what she was supposed to be doing. Maybe it was. Maybe I really missed the mark on that, but yeah, it was repetitive and disappointing and frustrating and not in a fun way.
Christina, bring us home on the end.
Oh, I'm sorry to say that this was a complete misfire for me. This is the one that did not work, and it breaks my heart because I, as you all, really wanted it to. But and you've said most that has to be said. But for me, it's that loss of momentum. It had a really interesting start, some really interesting songs, and then it just nothing happened. And the songs are not memorable. They're very one note, particularly in the themes. I think I wanted it to, them to say something else. So I'm kind of wondering what Oppenheimer really wanted with this. What does he want us to say? What is he saying? Why is he used? So all these questions, like why is he using musicals to begin with? Why is he doing something he says is golden age that you don't feel is golden age? What is the big objective with this movie? And since that almost is completely lost on me, and I asked you guys to, and several other people, to what was your point of view, and I just really can't figure it out. So to me, that became a really big misfire. That doesn't mean there are certain aspects that I don't really like. For example, George McKay, and there are several numbers that are really funny or really touching, but all in all, it just did not work out for me.
Yeah, I think it's been one of the more divisive films of the festival for sure. I think you guys are actually more in the majority than the minority on this one. It's been very divisive, and a lot of people.
But I love that you like it, Ryan. That's the point of a festival like this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love the hell out of this thing. I can't wait to watch it again. And I don't know if you guys want to, but I just think that. I think there is.
I'm fine not watching.
No, that's fine. I think there is stuff to go and tackle into it, and it will be fascinating to hear more from Oppenheimer and his team as they talk about this film throughout the year. I just love a big, audacious, bold swing, and those things work for me. And I can forgive some rough edges if the swing ultimately lands for me. And so. And then maybe, that's my fault. I guess.
I'll say this. I think what happens, there's always this accusing nature of festival response to movies, which can be just overdone, and that's not the case with this. If I recommend go and check out the Letterboxd bar for it. I don't think I've ever seen
it's a wild
quite
bar. Yeah.
like it. And that's kind of a cool thing, because sometimes it's just everything's almost 5 stars, or everything's down to ones and twos.
Yeah,
So it'll lots of opinions.
exactly.
There's room for everyone.
Well, it's that part of the show, folks. It's time for Saturday Night from Jason Reitman. You didn't think I was not going to do it on this show. That's right. Saturday night, premiering on Saturday night at the Telluride Film Festival.
Who'd have thunk it?
I mean, it was like it was made for a programmer's dream. Anyway, the film was introduced by Jason Reitman. We had a special guest show up along with him to introduce the film, the legendary SNL comedian.
Chevy Chase.
Not Chevy Chase.
That would have been something.
That would have been worse. I don't know.
Amazing.
It was the one and only Bill Murray, who obviously has a connection with Reitman and his family, and had another film, The Friend, that was at the fest too, that sadly none of us had time to get to. It's a short fest, folks. We'll get to it sometime soon. Though we did get to meet the dog.
Yes,
That's in
his
the-
name is Bing. I went over to him twice at the festival to pet him.
He
He's
was
a
the real star of the
beautiful,
weekend.
majestic Great Dane. He's coming for Messi from Anatomy of a Fall, I think.
Yeah, but he'll never be Brandy from
Right.
Once Upon a Time
right.
in Hollywood, and that's just something we need to make clear.
We'll
right
talk about Mikey Madison later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Oh,
our fiery takes on Mikey
Yes.
Madison's performance. Saturday night, we were all kind of worried about this going into it. Saw the trailer, poster, all that stuff. Let's get the negative reaction in here first. So, Erik, you didn't like this thing nearly as much as it seemed like everybody else has online, which it's been one of the bigger surprises and celebrated hits of the festival. And a lot of people have really responded to it. So what about it didn't work all the way for you, Erik? And I'm sending
Yeah,
this to Searchlight as you speak, or to Sony as you speak.
This is an example like the end, which was sort of the opposite for me, where my expectations for this were pretty low and my interest was even kind of low. And I like Saturday Night Live. I like the majority of this cast. I thought they're really fresh and cool and fun people. And there are a lot of good performances in here. I think Dylan O'Brien as Dan Aykroyd is amazing. His impression is fantastic. I think Corey Michael Smith as Chevy Chase, also really, really good. It's, if you have a setup of here is 90 minutes in real time, not real time, but like just a 90-minute period, kind of what to expect. You're going to get lots of whip pans and fast editing and walking through hallways and walk and talks. And what you hope or think is kind of like an inherent kinetic energy of time. And that's what it's supposed to be. And there's even a time clock that goes throughout the movie. And there is something absolutely lacking in that. And I don't know how. I don't know how you really couldn't, because there are just certain restrictions that a story like this comes with. And certainly Reitman doesn't stray outside of them very much at all. When he does do asides that are not the crazy energy of everybody moving around, they're just not very interesting at all. So I wasn't compelled by them. It just sort of drops things into a dead zone. I really like Gabriel LaBelle as a up and coming actor. I think he's obviously fantastic in The Fabelmans. I thought he was horribly miscast here. There is nothing in his energy that was speaking to what the energy of the timeline of this story of the 90 minutes before the very first episode of Saturday Night Live in 1975. There was none there for me at all. And he's too young.
All right. Sophia?
Yeah, I mean, going into this, like we talked about in our preview episode, like Jason Reitman and Gil Kenan, not names that make me excited to go
What's
see
your favorite film of the year? What are you
their
talking about?
their next movie.
They wrote the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
I
review
do
on the-
anything for Carrie Coon,
Yeah.
but I think here, I went in with a very low bar and I had a fun time. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was like a really good Saturday night festival movie. I think especially when you're getting a lot of heavier stuff. And for me, I think coming off of the end, I needed something a bit more straightforward and just that I could slip into a bit more easily. And I feel like here, what I did really love are the performances. So specifically Dylan O'Brien and Corey Michael Smith, who you mentioned, Erik. Also, Cooper Hoffman was great as Dick Ebersol. He has, I think, actually one of the best scenes that actually stretches out of impression and into creating a fully realized character. And that's a scene in the stairwell with Gabriel LaBelle, which is also in the trailer, but it's a bit more fleshed out in the full movie, obviously. And also shout out to Tommy Dewey, who plays Michael O'Donoghue. I thought he was fantastic. I think that overall it's hard with movies like this to not feel like you are just watching a bunch of actors cosplaying really famous comedians and just doing impressions, which a lot of comedians are known for being able to do. And I think some fall into that trap and can't get out of it, and others can transcend that a bit. Specifically for me, it was Corey Michael Smith as Chevy Chase, who I saw as Chevy Chase and saw him, I think, stretch for a little bit more than what was written in the movie. I think, though, that this is going to, it played so well at the festival. I mean, the audience was laughing so hard and cheering during this movie that you couldn't hear the punchline of half of the jokes because it was such a big hit with the crowd. And I think that when it comes out, it's going to, I think, really play well for general audiences. It's really fun. It's short. It's also really familiar too.
Yeah. Christina, I know you like this.
I had a great time. I thought it was fantastic. I think the choice to do it as a 90-minute in real time leading up to the first broadcast and not doing like a week before or something like going to was the perfect choice to document the energy and legacy and just the genius of SNL. And they didn't veer from going into certain dark aspects, drug use and whatever. I was thinking maybe this would be a little bit more PG, so to speak. And I think they got to those things, but they within the right amount of time. They had the perfect amount of use of these. It would have been a much more cosplay, as you were saying, if they would have settled longer on each character. But it was a perfect amount of Chevy Chase, perfect amount of Dan Aykroyd. So you got the touch of it, and it was mostly their voices and mannerisms. There weren't a lot of look-alike wigs and things like that. And I thought they really captured that early essence of SNL, which is kind of lost in the broadcast that we see today. And I had a great time. I thought it was really fun.
I think it's one of the.
And Jason Reitman is very hit or miss for me as well.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned that, Sophia, as well.
I think
so,
he's hit or
so
miss
I
for
was,
all of us, to be fair.
Yeah. And I think this is some of his best work and best choices. I think this is a film about how you really had to make choices as to how you were going to do this. And it just feels like the perfect run up to the 50th anniversary for me.
I think he made a lot of specific choices that only someone who had it's not fan servicing that and just pure nostalgia. I think there's like literal deliberate things that make it fun and make it uniquely only someone like Reitman, who has this reverence and coming from a background where he's been around most of these comedians or his father, with his father. Like there's a great moment in the film where literally we have the musical break, and it is a wonderful joke, and it's set up just like at times a regular episode of SNL in terms of its punchlines. I think that the humor, it does not shy away from the humor that is back there. It doesn't try to update that by any means, and I think that that's the right thing to do. It's weirdly funny from Reitman and because they're not particularly funny screenwriters. They're particularly in their collaborations, they've been a little bit more, let's use a kind word today, mundane. And trying to, in their last couple of films, they've been making movies that are purely nostalgic machines, and they're hollow, empty pieces of entertainment for families. And this isn't that. I think that it is propulsive and it has a lot of fun, and it's a perfect lead into the 50th anniversary year that they're going to be celebrating on SNL this coming year with a full anniversary piece. I do think that people will really like this movie because I think that it's just a lot of damn fun. And I know, Eric, you didn't like LaBelle and you thought he was miscast. I actually thought he was great. I thought Cooper Hoffman was great. That stairwell sequence, Sophia, the thing that I would want to mention is it felt like he was channeling his father when he was getting angry in there, and it made me super nostalgic for even just that. I thought that Corey Michael Smith Dylan O'Brien. I do think though that the female characters could have been fleshed out more, especially
Very much
the
so.
Jane Curtin
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Gilda Radner characters. I felt like we could have
I
got
agree
a
with
lot
that.
more of those. I also thought that the John Belushi character it was what it was. Like
Awful.
it's not good. There is a moment though, as an SNL fan though, where John is skating and Gilda's talking to him, and it did make me, and then I guess that's the purpose
That
of
was cute.
nostalgia, but it
Yeah.
also, I thought it was really sweet. And I think that for Reitman, who's a director that's kind of been, all over the place the last decade or so, I think this is his best movie since Up in the Air, and maybe since Juno even. I think that it might be a
Low
little hit,
bar.
and I think it's
Very
gonna
low
be,
bar.
oh, I think those are good movies. But also, yeah, there's a couple of good movies in between there. But I also think that it's going to go to Toronto, and I do think that the audience there is going to have a great time with it. They're going to probably have the cast. That was something that we didn't have here. And it's, Lauren Michaels will probably be out there as well too. It's going to continue this run of having a big celebration, and it's also has, this is the thing also too to keep in mind. Every single actor that's in this movie, that's in the main part of this movie, has single title cards at the end of this movie. And that's huge for SAG Ensemble down the road, which I could totally see this thing getting. Even though that there are more of the veteran actors that show up in this movie that I think actually suck and shouldn't be in this, like Matthew Rice and J.K. Simmons and there's, Nicholas Braun playing two performances that are bad, both of Andy Kaufman and Jim Henson. No, thank you. But I
Very
think
cousin Greg wandered onto the set of
I got a
the
beard
movie.
today.
Yeah.
But I think the rest of the ensemble does a fantastic job, and yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. And Sophia knows I was very skeptical of the trailer. Hell, I was even making fun of the poster. And so, yeah, I had a great time with it. All right, Anora, Palme d'Or winner. We finally all got to see it. We woke up super early to see it. So thank God we all liked it, right? And so
Oh, yes.
I'm going to kick it over to Sean Baker's favorite fan, Sophia Ciminello right here. And you're a big fan of his work. No, I'm just kidding. I know, Sophia, you're mixed on Sean Baker as a filmmaker.
I'm a big fan now after our conversation that I
Oh,
had with him.
yes,
but-
he's a great person, I think, to talk to. He's a major cinephile.
Mhm.
But I know that you were up and down with his last couple of directorial efforts, but I know you really, really connected with this one. This
Yeah.
go round, right?
This is the story of the festival for me. It's these filmmakers who I'm very up and down on, and I had really different responses to each one of their films at this festival. Really, being really surprised in how much I loved it and saying, yeah, they're still really not for me. And in this case, I loved Anora. I thought it was just this really wild, almost screwball comedy at times. I thought that Mikey Madison's performance as the titular Anora, or Annie, as she calls herself, as this dancer who meets this very young, spoiled Russian, like, billionaire's child. I mean, he is just so amazing in this movie and also delightfully awful. And I thought that this movie had so much energy. I think that sometimes Sean Baker's movies drag on for me, and this one I think felt very intentional. I felt that Annie as a character was so fully realized, both by Baker as a writer and director, but specifically by Mikey Madison and what she's bringing to the film. Her comedy is next level. I think all of the actors, their comedy is. I was surprised by how funny it was, but I also think that she gives a very fearless, bold performance in just how she carries herself throughout this movie, and how she isn't really afraid to go after these guys when we have a really long extended sequence when she's just all, again, no spoilers, because I think you should go in as blind as possible to this, but I think this movie also has one of the best endings of the year. And everyone knows Challengers is my favorite movie. That ending is still supreme, but this one is close. And I felt incredibly moved and touched by it. And I didn't expect to cry during this movie, but I did at the end. So I highly recommend it. One of my favorites that I saw this weekend.
Christina, are you usually a fan of Baker's work
I
going
think
into
more
this?
than Sophia.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
this was way by far my absolute favorite, and I like his work. But
Of his filmography
yes, I'm
okay.
blown away by this movie. I loved it. I had not realized that it was going to go in so many directions. For me, it was a drama, as you said, a screwball comedy. It's also a story about class and privilege. It's romantic. It's Mikey Madison is her career. I cannot wait what she does going forward. This was one of the absolute best performances I've seen in a long time. And I was just really taken by this movie. And I also want to mention the supporting characters in here, which are superb. So when the parents of the son of the oligarch find out that he got married to this exotic dancer from Brooklyn, his parents get some people involved to go get him, get her, and have this marriage annulled. And that whole sequence with the characters that come and pick them up is like something out. I mean, several long takes of screwball comedy that are amazingly difficult to film and were so funny. And I didn't realize I was going to laugh so much in this movie. Because I usually don't in Sean Baker's movies, and I laughed so much, and then I cried so much, and for me, it was just the ultimate cinematic experience to have so many emotions in one little package. This is, for me, I'm so hoping it's going to get a Oscar love in many different ways, but particularly for Mikey.
Erik?
Well, as a fellow exotic dancer from Brooklyn, I definitely connected with
What was your stage
with
name, Erik?
with Annie here.
Oh, yes.
No, we don't talk about that time in my life
Okay.
anymore.
If you email the podcast if you want to find out.
Yeah, color me surprised that this is the funniest
Awards
film of
crotch.
the year. Like how? Oh my God!
Sorry.
I need to take a beat there.
Oh,
That's amazing.
That's
Well, you know, as
coming to
soon
the
as
stage, awards crotch.
the moment that this industry collapses, I'll go right to the OnlyFans side and awards crotch. There we
That's your
go.
Substack right there. You know what I mean?
Wow, I don't even know where to go from here.
Anyway,
You guys still like me though.
No, that was amazing. I'm gonna have to go and get the domain name like right now.
yeah. We're gonna jump
Yes,
on that.
no, I couldn't have been more surprised at how funny it was. There is an extended, absolutely slapstick madcap sequence in the middle of the film that is so funny, and it's really carefully modulated because it would be
Right.
very easy and kind of silly just to make a woman that's a sex worker, but she's really strong too, and she's feisty. And Annie is so much more than that, and I'm pretty impressed that Sean Baker was able to draw her so beautifully. Because even like in that sequence, there could be a lot of very obvious moments of abuse or the wrong kind of intimidation of her, and that we see of women that are sex workers in movies many, many, many times. And it avoids nearly all of them to such a refreshing degree. And yeah, Mikey Madison, talk about also somebody who is the opposite in person to anyone that she has ever played. She's just a firecracker.
Yeah. I thought of bringing it back to Challengers again, but in person, she reminds me of how like Josh O'Connor is so different from Patrick. Like, couldn't it be more different? So that performance, like both of those two are some of the greatest performances of the year just because of how far I feel like they had to stretch
Yeah.
to achieve those performances. And yeah, she's fantastic.
She is. And I think if, just because of the way that the Cannes Film Festival awards work, if it hadn't won the Palm, she probably would have won actress, and then Emilia Perez maybe Palm. And that it just, there's a lot of workings, that it takes to get those awards because of how it has to happen. But yeah, she should be coming for quite a bit of attention.
Yeah, she's the fresh face on the scene this year for sure, and she delivers one of the best performances of the year, easily. It's not even close. She's up there with another actress that we'll talk about, or another couple of actresses, I guess we're going to talk about here really shortly. I'll say this: I'm most I'm kind of hot or cold on how much I love Sean Baker's works. I sometimes I just think they're good, or I think they're like, that was fine, and I never think about them again. Florida Project. But I thought this is his best work maybe ever. I agree with Christina. There's so much in this movie if you want to dissect it, but it's also just so damn entertaining. Maybe the best second act in a movie all year, and that says a lot because I think that obviously some second acts can really ruin it, but like this movie turns into a whole different thing in the second act and has that sort of I was telling Sophia, it had like an After Hours vibe to it, very 70, and but even before that, it was very 70s New York, run around the city trying to find someone vibe to it. That's part of the story, and I just had a great time with these buffoons and with Anora just around, just in this car doing these things. It's how they're all hilarious, but then, like everyone said, it subtly sneaks up on you, and the ending is so touching and heartbreaking, which is not really something Sean Baker's known for. And I think that has a lot to do with Madsen's performance. I think it also has to do, this isn't the first time Sean Baker's made a movie about sex workers. But it's like but it's the most mature version of that, weirdly enough, even though it's also the most chaotic version of that at times too. I don't know. A very justifiable, wonderful Palme d'Or winner, and I'm happy that it won. Still no Tree of Life, but it's well worthy of being the successor to the first Palme d'Or winner since that's by an American director, which is an enormous thing to be because it's very rare.
Of a narrative feature.
Of a narrative feature, yes. Yeah. And so it's very, very rare that happens. But it's a very worthy winner. And I could see why it won, because it also has directorial influences. Like when Sophia and I were saying, we were able to talk to Sean Baker a little bit, and just he had so many influences that he was pulling out of just for scene by scene, for character decisions, all those things. He's a fascinating guy to just talk about and break down movies with, in his movies specifically. And he was talking about film stock and all these different things. So I can understand why. And I do think to Christina's point, I do think it will be a big player because it is Neon's big push this year. And I do think that I think it's going to do really well. Maybe not wins, but I'm confident. And now I'm putting it into some nomination categories. Speaking,
I want to shout out.
Yura
Borisov among the amazing supporting
Yes.
male lineup in this film, all of whom are absolutely A+ comedic geniuses.
They are.
But yeah, Yura Borisov as Igor, maybe the most gorgeous supporting actor performer of the season.
You want to take that praise offline, Awards Scratch?
We might be having to go into the Patreon for that one.
The After Hours podcast.
Yeah.
There you go. After Dark.
He is wonderful.
He's wonderful. No, he really is.
He is quiet through so much of this film, and the camera has him outside, just on the side of the frame, and we are looking at him while other things are happening or other people are speaking. And what a gorgeously expressive face.
It's also like there's the funny scene where
Also, kidnap me. Go ahead,
yeah, it's
please.
like he has like where he's like eating the popcorn on the like right off frame. So it's not just moments of
Mhm.
subtle beauty or even sadness in that performance. There's also just these little jokes in there. If you don't catch them, they're on the side of the frame or whatnot. So yeah, it's a really, really damn good movie. Right after that, we saw Emilia Perez, which Christina was able to see at Cannes. So this was her second time seeing it, was our first time seeing it. Um, Netflix's biggest player in the race this year. Or maybe it isn't. I don't know. They did pick up a title like you said, Sophia, in Maria. But I was not prepared for this. I'm gonna go first here real quick. I'll talk, we talked about big swings. I talked about it just recently with Joshua Oppenheimer in the end. Holy shit. Like it's like this movie is so much to talk about, and you really can't spoil it. But yeah, it's just like a mix of all these campy, fun. I was kind of delirious at a certain point, but then it's the movie is a musical and it settles down, and then it becomes emotional at times, and then it becomes like a little bit of an action movie by the end, and it's like it's all these different things. But I think it's a good movie. I have to see how it does on a rewatch. I know Christina, it was better for you on the rewatch. Um, Zoe Saldana's performance, my God. All the actresses, but I thought her specifically, there was just like this energy to her. And I know, I know the category placements and all that would stand, and we'll talk about that as the season goes on, but that is one of the best performances of the year. And I mean, she has multiple scenes where she's just delivering these great songs. And Carlos Sofia Gaston, she's fantastic too. Selena Gomez. Anyway, Christina, how was your second viewing for yourself?
Well, I really liked it the first time, so saying it's even better the second time is high praise.
Yeah.
I think the first time you see this movie, it's a lot. It's so much that you kind of really don't slow down to see how they've actually put it together. And I think I was struck the second time around how moving I thought the last part of it was when they really go into Los Desaparecidos and what's the sort of the politics in Mexico, all the disappeared and the families that are in distress over the loss of their children, which of course is at the hands of our main character Manitas, who was in the cartels, and they bring that around beautifully in a way that moved me more. But I think you guys should talk to it. So seeing it the first time, I echo you on the performances. So Saldana is just amazing in it, and I think that you can tell in the Q&As I've seen with her that this is really personal to her. She feels incredible gratitude to have done this, and she's really brought everything to it.
Yeah, she didn't have to spend the summer with Big Jim. She got to work with Odio. Right, Erik?
Yes.
Your thoughts, Erik?
I really, 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 really like it. It is though one of those funny things where I knew what I was going to get going in, because the reviews and the commentary about and around it, it's a trans musical. It's so many things. So it wasn't that I wasn't surprised. I did have going in, what I thought it was going to be. It did jump over that a little bit with some of those numbers that were more on the absolute Almodovar kind of camp level.
Andrew Lloyd Webber was what you were describing.
Yeah, it was like Andrew Lloyd Webber at times too. One of the things I really appreciate about this movie is it has multiple songs and they are all different. They all have proper perspectives and points of view. And sometimes it was really funny because it was just literally every line was just, here's what's happening. And it would break, between. I I just thought that was really cool. I really liked that. I thought it was having a lot of fun with all of these different styles too. And I really love Zoe Saldana in this. I feel like she is somebody who has wanted to give a bigger performance than she's really been offered. And she's been in the business for 2 decades. This isn't, but this feels so new for her.
She's been stuck in
It's
the
just
Marvel Big Jim world for like the last decade, and it feels like great to
very
see
much.
her do
She's been
something break
under
out.
under either motion cap or, green makeup for quite a bit of
Yeah.
the last decade. And I don't know. This is just really something special for her.
After the piano lesson, I was just gonna say after my favorite number of the piano lesson, the work song, my second favorite of the festival is one of the musical numbers here where she's visiting different doctors to see how I don't want to spoil it because you're going
No,
fresh, but
yeah.
you'll know what I mean when I see it, when you see it.
That's one of the events of the year, I'll tell you that. Yeah.
It's easily one of my absolute favorite musical moments in a year that is pretty packed full of musicals and music-driven films.
Yep.
Let's just say that is the song that Awards Crotch will be performing.
Yeah.
At
the Oscars.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Golden
My
Speedo,
God.
ladies and gentlemen.
So you know what we mean.
Sophia, your thoughts on Emilia Perez?
Yeah, so every year without fail, there is a movie that I try desperately to become a fan of, or like feel like I just want to support because I love the actors and there are things in it, individual components of the movie that I genuinely love, but it's like there are films that I just can't get on their wavelength, and this really was one of them for me. I am pretty much in the middle on it, which I know is surprising because most people are very positive or very negative. I'm actually right down the middle. And I think the reason why is because I was actually really vibing with the campy arch quality of it at the beginning.
Like the first act?
Yeah, the first act, those early songs, I was loving it. And the camera work and just how out there it was. It felt so different and fresh and original. And that is something that I really loved. When it gets into the politics and the cartel and it becomes, I think, much more of a straightforward dramatic musical, that is when it lost me. And I actually didn't feel anything from those songs, or I just didn't find it moving. And so that's why I think I need to watch it again, because I think it was just a sensory overload. The tonal whiplash was too much for me on a first viewing. And I know I'll see it at other festivals this season and we'll be covering it come award season because I think it will be a big player.
Yeah.
I'll see it again and hopefully it will click in more for me on rewatch.
Kind of know what to expect there at that point. I mean,
Yeah.
Christina, you did have reservations, I think, a little bit. You liked it, but you had reservations on the first go around, and I think it did clear up for you a little bit on the second go around.
It did. It did. Yeah, I think that I think that again, as I said, the first time you see it, it's so much. It's such, like to Sophia's point, sensory overload. You don't know what direction is this going. Wow, what's happening here? That when you know that, the next time you can really see the thought they've put into it, and sort of, in another measured way, at least for me.
I want to get to the last film that we all saw together, and then we can do some individual films that we all saw and get some quick takes on those before we get out of here. So we were able to see Maria, which is the new film from Pablo Larraín, which stars Angelina Jolie as Maria Callas, the acclaimed opera singer. This movie had an interesting ride to get all the way to the mountains of Telluride, as it had premiered at Venice, and was received very mixed to even negative by the Venice press out there. Vicious, things sometimes. There's usually one movie every year that maybe either comes over here or it has that maybe then we don't necessarily agree with the takes out of Venice. We saw this morning, and I loved it. I really loved a lot of it, and I know that I wasn't the biggest fan of Spencer. Well, I'll get to the Spencer head here in a moment, Erik. I know you're a big fan of that movie. It's what was it again? One of the greatest performances of all time by Kristen Stewart was the tweet. But
I stand by that.
Yeah. But I thought Jolie was incredible in this movie. Ed fucking Lockman and his cinematography, the production design. I mean, that's the thing with Pablo Larraín. You're not going to get shorted on the technical aspect. He always has a really precise and delicate and at times also bold take on these worlds in his movies. And while his movie last year, El Conde, put me to sleep up here in the mountains, I was at the edge of my seat and very comfortable in this movie, and I thought it was very moving. This was very much more, in my opinion, a connection and real companion piece with Jackie, both for a narrative standpoint as well as also in terms of the narrative with what's going on in the story, but also in terms of how I felt watching it and the vibe that I had, and also the all-encompassing performance by the lead actress. I think Jolie, I've said it about Mikey Madison just a couple minutes ago, but I do think that Angelina Jolie also delivers one of the great performances of the year. This is going to be we're already seeing a difficult actress race, and we have Amy Adams coming next week, and the reactions for that, and we have some other contenders, to talk about too during the year. But I mean, between Madison and Jolie here, those are two just performances. I don't think people are going to get out of their heads. But I think Jolie's is actually just a smidge better. There's just some it's one of those things I was telling Christina about real quick, and then I'll get it over to you guys. You know that thing we talked about this on Director Watch a couple, during the Tony Scott series about Will Smith, and that you have these and hear me out, just hang on, is that you have these great movie stars in their presence, and when they decide to want to do a project like Maria or even like King Richard, those projects get elevated because they have a fucking movie star attached to it that just understands how to grab the audience and bring them in, that gravitational pull. And she has that not only in the film, but in the Q&A that we listen to afterwards. She just has that. And I hope that she's around all season long. This is a performance of her career. And it's so glad to have her back. Sophia, for yourself, your thoughts on Maria?
Yeah, I really, really liked Maria. I was very emotional by the end of it. And I think a lot of that has to do with Jolie's performance. I was talking to our dear friend and best actress connoisseur, Kevin Jacobson, after I saw this movie, because I told him that this performance reminded me of that very specific lost old Hollywood melodramatic diva performance that we don't get anymore. It reminded me of something Gloria Swanson would have done
Sunset
a long
Boulevard,
time ago. Yeah. And that I am just always so in the bag for. And there's just something about her. I think it's just such a deeply emotional and vulnerable performance from Jolie. I think also considering like her personal life and her journey as an actress and what she could bring into it. I just was very, very moved by her the whole entire time. She's very funny in the movie too. Her line deliveries are great. Stephen Knight, I have some issues with his scripts always, but here I think Jolie, she really elevated the material in a great way. I think she really understood it. And I mean, the costumes, it's Massimo Cantini Perini, who did the costumes, longtime favorite of the Academy. And just seeing her walk the streets of Paris in those furs and the boots, I just thought like, this is an all-time character and performance for me, like one that I will come back to and really think about all season, but even longer than that. And Ed Lockman's work reminded me a lot of Vittorio Storaro's work, one of my all-time favorite cinematographers. I thought quite often about The Conformist, which was also mentioned at the Q&A today. So yeah, all around, I really liked this. And I think I was a bit surprised based on those Venice reactions.
Yeah, and also your relationship to Lorraine as a director.
Yes,
if I'm not
because
mistaken.
I like Jackie and Spencer. I was lower on than others, but
And El Conde?
and Okande, yes, we're gonna.
Okay.
I'll skip over that one. Clearly, I forgot about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and Christina, I know you love this.
I loved it. I really did. I was also thinking of the Sunset Boulevard element of it, not just only in the Gloria Swanson-esque performance, but also with the butlers and the whole hidden away in her house and how she meets reality, so to speak. This is also a film. I mean, Angelina Jolie, I echo everything. She's mesmerizing. Really does a great vulnerable job as Maria Callas. But this is also a movie of choices for me. How he chose to go back in her life and in ways that you can really, when making a biopic, if you want to call this a biopic, you can really misfire doing that. And I think he made particularly interesting choices, giving her both diva qualities, giving her a lot of vulnerable memories, but just enough of those memories for us to realize what was actually going on without going way too far into that. And I just think, I don't like Spencer. It's not my movie, but this trilogy is so interesting. And I think that we're going to be seeing, film research projects, not only of the three women that he's depicted, but also of the women who have done them, Natalie Portman, Kristen Stewart, Angelina Jolie. And we're going to just be talking about these films for a long time. I think this really ended the trilogy in a magnificent way. I don't know what they're thinking, all the reviewers over in Venice, because I was blown away.
Right. Well, we can move on. We don't need to talk about this. We don't need to hear Erik's opinion. I think it's safe to say we're running long. Oh, I'm sorry. Erik, let's
Yes.
get it out. What did you think about this movie?
So-
And also how it relates to the trilogy, because I know you've been a big fan of, I know you're
Yeah.
a big Pablo Larraín fan, and I know that you love
Yes.
first two entries into this
Yeah.
trilogy that he has here.
So every year we kind of stray further and further away from the concept of a movie star. We're not certainly making movie stars anymore. Ironically enough, as this is a Netflix film, streaming has kind of killed the movie star. This is a movie star performance. Just one of those, it could only be her and only be now. And I love that. That convergence of the right movie star and right role at the right point in their professional and personal life is my sweet spot every single time. And that's what this is for Jolie. It's a born to play role. She is extraordinary and so vulnerable. The opening shot is her face up
Yeah.
close
Yeah.
and
an all-time great face.
singing, and what a face.
Elegant.
Yes, I am a huge fan of Jackie and Spencer, and especially Spencer. I was over the moon for it. I love that that Maria weaves in Jackie Kennedy into this story. It weaves in the Anne Boleyn part of Spencer into this story, and does so naturally, although I will say the Kennedy stuff at first I was really nervous about. And that's mostly because Knight's screenplay and his
was rough
writing
for me there,
ability
too.
can be that's where it's iffy. Because they also have Marilyn Monroe's Happy Birthday is recreated. So that sequence was right on the edge for me. But I was really surprised at how well it was done, and the conversation between Callas and John F. Kennedy about who they are as people, beautiful, absolutely wonderful.
I just love that little Marilyn Monroe sequence, because another one of these women that we would have much preferred to see Pablo Larraín do blonde, maybe.
No
And so I
shit.
thought that was a little Cherry on.
Yeah, I
I
think
was
that
like,
I think that
damn
would
it,
have
I
been
want that movie.
pretty amazing. And it was really fun because I think I got halfway through this and I thought, wouldn't it have been like really cool if Lorraine had been able to do Evita and do the Eva Perón story? Because absolutely would have been a natural person for him to explore. But, obviously I love the Madonna version. It's great. And that was 96 and he wouldn't have been able to do that. But then we get a balcony moment
Mhm.
that sort of satisfied that. And that's where I just was like, oh, that got me. That moment, that got me. And
I was, yeah,
I was in it.
I was just thinking about, you said that and we both said that it tied to Jackie. I was just thinking about the moments when they do refer to Jackie, that Natalie Portman was just on set, but they didn't use her, and she's just sitting over there. We're like, we'll get you in here. Like it felt like, but it just felt like that's like, again, like that's I think the cool things about, like you're saying there, Eric, the connective tissue to those other films, but it doesn't take away from talking and looking into Callus, and it doesn't take away from this movie and from Jolie, who is in every scene, every moment, all encompassing, doing singing, being vulnerable, but again, just commanding the screen.
A lesser director would have actually had Portman in a cameo
Yeah, there would have been
in
a
this
in credit sequence maybe that was
and to hold that
the
for somebody
Lorraine Cinematic
who
Universe.
enjoys a little bit of hyperbole and fun. This is also really the most reserved. This is coming after Spencer's moments of very heightened.
There's no pearls.
Ghost story and the pearls. There's ghostly elements in this, but it's handled very differently. And she's just a very different woman.
Yeah.
Than either of them.
She's not going to KFC. You know what I mean?
Don't dog that scene because it's my favorite scene in that movie.
I know it is, but it's not good. Okay. We love this movie. We'll be talking about it throughout the whole year because she's a bona fide, Best Actress nominee easily. Okay. 4 movies. We're going to each do one of them because we all individually saw them. So I'm going to kick it over to Eric to talk about a movie that played at Venice, September 5th. How are we going with it?
However you want to refer to it.
You want to talk about this movie because it a lot of positive reactions for it. I know you and Sophia saw it, but I think talking to both of you kind of on the same page that it was a pretty good, effective film, right?
Take it away, Eric.
Yeah, and we didn't really mention too much that Maria was really the only major Venice title to make it over to Telluride. Normally there is a lot of crossover, and there just was not this year, which I think goes back to what we were kind of talking about earlier, that there was clearly some things missing.
It was clearly a negotiation
in this,
for the titles later in the festival.
But yeah, September 5 was one of them. It is a dramatic telling of the news side element of the 1972 Munich Olympics with the hostage situation. It's a really tense film, and it does kind of everything that, for me, Saturday Night didn't do. Obviously different tones. It's not a comedy. But it is also trying to it is doing the same thing. It is a behind the scenes look at what the pre-digital age was for telling news stories, how split second live news drama is. And it wasn't really news, it was the sports side of ABC that was telling this story. And just going through the political fights between networks so that ABC could get the satellite from CBS, and whether they can show somebody being killed on TV, because they were in a brand new era. This was the first Olympics that had ever had a live broadcast across the world. uh, which obviously made it the target that it was. We've seen film versions of the other side of this with Steven Spielberg's Munich, one of the best movies of 2005. There is the Oscar-winning documentary One Day in September from 1999, also really brilliant. Being able to see different versions of pieces of history that either we think that we know or even if we don't, because I was really getting a vibe in the audience that they were not very familiar with this. And I get it. 1972 is 50 years ago. But it was one of the most defining moments of the decade, and certainly for media. And I think the cast, John McGarrow, Peter Sarsgaard, Ben Chaplin, really, really good. Another weaving of archival footage with not absolutely seamless. It's a remarkable film.
Yeah, heard a lot of great things. I know, Sophia, you liked it.
I did.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I mean, 1972, that is my time period. So I was very happy to be in the 70s.
Be
for
home.
be home for a top political thriller. I feel like it was a really good final film of the festival.
Yeah. Should be playing at other regional festivals throughout the rest of the year. Sophia, do you want to talk a little bit about our medallion winners film, Saoirse Ronan, the Outrun, which played at the Sundance Film Festival, garners a lot of attention for Ronan, and it's going to be her push, I think, for a lot of people think, for a Best Actress run this season. Your thoughts on the film?
Yeah, I mean, we have so many, as we've talked about, incredible lead actress performances at this festival.
It's wild.
It's wild.
Move over, men.
It's very dominant, and Saoirse Ronan definitely deserves a place in that conversation. I think that, we were a little bit surprised that she was one of our medallion winners, just given she's so young, and we have, Angelina Jolie with a film, Sam Jackson, like we talked about, so even Ray Fiennes. So there were a lot of options, but I think everyone, if you haven't read it, look up Saoirse's tribute written by Greta Gerwig. It is so beautiful, an incredible piece of writing. And in this film, Saoirse is channeling a Jenna Rollins type of performance. It is very raw and vulnerable. It's very real and lived in. She's playing a woman who's 29 years old who is an alcoholic, and the film itself isn't as successful as her performance. I think that the way that the narrative is structured is a bit tricky, and because it jumps around so frequently, sometimes it feels more like a shell of a film than an actual fully, envisioned narrative. And I think if it would have been that, Saoirse's performance would have felt even stronger. But what she does in this movie, I think, is pretty breathtaking. She is an incredible drunk actor. Fans of Lady Bird will know this from her hospital scene. There's actually a shot in this where she has a little bit of mascara under her eyes when she's laying in bed, and it reminded me of that great scene when she's gone to college and she wakes up in the hospital after a bender. But yeah, I think she's really great in those drunken moments, and they feel very real, and not a lot of actors can actually do that very well. But she's even better in the really vulnerable moments. There's a scene when she's sober and she's at a grocery store, and the wine is behind the cash register. It's behind the counter. And you can just tell that she needs it. She just wants that so desperately. And she doesn't get it because she's in recovery at that moment. But you can just, in those moments where she has anxiety after a bad night, or she's, really itching to just smell a glass of wine, it's pretty profound stuff. So I was really, really impressed by her performance. The movie, less so, but I think it's worth seeing just for her alone.
Okay. All right. And Sony Pictures Classics, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
on that one.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to run great campaigns over there.
Mm-hmm.
They have a couple of films this year that they have to run as well. Christina, last film of the fest that we saw was a film also at Sundance, was Jesse Eisenberg's A Real Pain, featuring Eisenberg and also Kieran Culkin of Succession. A lot of buzz. It was one of the surprise films that showed up along with The Apprentice, the Donald Trump film, with Sebastian Stan. Those were the surprise films, the TBA films that came, and they played, I don't know about The Apprentice, but A Real Pain played really well in the 2 screenings that it was at. And for yourself, how was it?
Oh, it's a real gem. I loved it. I wasn't a big fan of Jesse Eisenberg's his directorial debut, and it seems like everything came together for this one. So it's about 2 cousins who travel to Poland for a tour, and where their grandmother, they want to see their grandmother's house where they live. They tour concentration camp. It's in the same way, sort of, that Anora uses humor in very difficult topics. I think it's so successful, and it is a beautiful little ensemble. I didn't know that Will Sharp from White Lotus was in it. He's amazing. Jennifer Grey is in it. But I have to talk about the 2 leads, and particularly Kieran Culkin, who is doing a sort of version of Roman Roy in a way, but with much more. He has the humor. He has the he's very much in a bad place, but he has much more emotional depth than Roman. Is doing a really great performance, and I think that this could be Oscar talk for him, at least nomination. Jesse Eisenberg, who's playing the opposite type of character from his cousin, is also doing an amazing job, and in a way, I think an even more difficult role, because he's just sort of reacting to what his cousin's doing all the time, and it really balanced the bigger picture of what they were visiting and the horrors of what family legacy and what your forefathers have been through, with a very small movie about emotions between these 2 cousins and what's happening right now at the moment. And I thought it was really, really lovely. I think I understand that this is going to play really well.
Yeah, I think it's going to play really well. Erik, I know you gave it a glowing review out of when you
I
were
loved
watching
it.
at
It's
Sundance.
incredible.
I mean, it's a mandatory rule that the last film of the Telluride Film Festival makes Ryan McQuade a blubbering mess. And it happened the last 2 times I was here, and it did it again this year. I think it's a really special film. I cannot undersell what Christina said there. It is a massive improvement as a writer and director for Jesse Eisenberg. That other film is a bad movie. And I just think that also too, with him in it, it feels very personal, centering around Culkin, who gives a magnificent performance, a magnificent lead performance. And I will not budge on that all season, folks. But I think it's great writing, and it's 90 minutes, but it's extremely effective. Last film I want to talk about is the first film I saw. It was actually kind of like on a chance and on a whim. Christina saw this in the schedule and we went to it. And it's a movie called Casa Bonita, Mi Amor. And you would think, oh, like what kind of documentary is that about? Well, it's about Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators of South Park, saving essentially what is Casa Bonita, which is this Disneyland of Mexican restaurants that's in the middle of Colorado. They decided to go ahead and buy it out of bankruptcy. It's like a childhood place that they've gone to for so many years, and a Colorado institution. And they ended up putting millions and millions and millions of dollars into this renovation. And it's a fairly simple documentary, but one, it shows their passion and creative process better than I think a lot of their other documentaries have about those 2 guys. But then also, this was a real story, and they really tried to go ahead and restore something that's very positive and vital in the community. Reminded me a lot of like places that I went to as when I was a kid that no longer exist, but were so unique, like arcades and these places that you go for your birthday, or celebrations for team, your soccer team or whatever, that no longer exist. And it's about saving that for the next generation. But then there's a sadness to it, as well as that when you do save that, then you can become a distraction as a celebrity inside of it. And it was funny and quite moving at the same time for those guys. I highly recommend it. I know it's going to be out on streaming here very, very soon. And so, yeah, it's just a quick, simple, easy 90-minute doc and it felt very actually the right thing to watch to start off the fest because it felt very Colorado. It felt so much love about the state and and the people here, which are always gracious hosts to us during this Telluride Film Festival. Christina, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work? And Christina, I'm going to throw in a bonus for everyone here. We just saw a bunch of films, but we still have a lot of films that we're anticipating for the rest of the year. So I'd like you to give us your now new most anticipated film left to see this year.
The Brutalist, my number one that I really want to see.
All right. Awesome. And where can we find all your work, Christina?
Yes, you can find my show is called Pop Culture Confidential. It's an audio podcast. You'll find so listen to that. You'll get interviews with Carla Sofia Gascon, for example, who just talked about here, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Christina Birro. And I just want to say a quick thing here. I also saw the Martha Stewart documentary,
that's right, you
which
did.
I recommend, and I just want to say, do a double feature with Maria for Ultimate Diva Evening.
There you go. There you go. Sophia.
Yeah, I mean, most anticipated for the rest of the year, I would definitely say The Brutalist. If you compare a movie to There Will Be Blood and Tar, I am in automatically.
And The Godfather.
And The Godfather. Oh my God.
Jesus.
I also love architecture and architectural history, oddly. So very excited about that little nerdy detail. And of course, The Room Next Door, because Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore. I love them both so much, two of my favorite actresses, and I love Pedro Almodovar. I also just thank you guys for another fantastic Telluride. I know we were a little ho-hum on the potential lineup at first, but it was so much fun, and I really enjoyed spending the time with you and watching all these movies. You can find me on Twitter at Sophia_Sim, Letterboxd at Faye Dunaway. You can find my podcast, Oscar Wilde, wherever you listen to podcasts, and reviews, interviews, and future award season coverage at AwardsWatch.
Erik Anderson, Mr. Awards Crotch himself.
Yes. Oh my God. I think my sloppy answer would be Gladiator 2, but but I'm realistically, Queer is the thing that I am looking forward to most. It's the history of that novel is fascinating. It's a very small novel, so it's clearly been expanded upon quite a bit, and I just want that. Two Lucas in 1 year, please give me it.
There you go.
Yep, you can find me at awardswatch.com, obviously, hopefully, if you're here, and awards_watch on Twitter and awardswatch everywhere else. Venice Film Festival is still going on. We have reviews of that coming in every day. Telluride reviews still coming in, and that's gonna just boot us right into Toronto because we are knee deep in the passenger seat of festival season right now.
I'm not going to finish any of that. Thank you very much, Erik. Mr. Crotch. Anyway, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. You can find all my work at awardswatch.com. If you like podcasts, there's this little thing called Director Watch. We do it every Thursday. We're in the middle of a Terrence Malick series. The New World is the episode that we'll be releasing this week. 5 stars on iTunes and Spotify. While you're over on the website, sign up for the newsletter. It is the best way to get all the work that's being put on the website. And this is the time to get the newsletter because this will be a best chance for you to get all the stuff all in one place, sent to you twice a week for news, reviews, interviews, and well, maybe twice a week if Erik's up to it, and podcast all in one place. Most anticipated film of the year here?
Oh my God.
No, I'm just kidding. It's a complete unknown.
Go stand in the corner.
No, I'm sorry. It tough. I mean, probably The Brutalist after the responses, but Queer is also right up there. There's like it's like the three films we mentioned. Those are the three, right?
Yeah.
The big three.
Those are the big three. I would do really. It was the film that I did not get to see here, and I really want to see. And I'll give a different answer then. Out of those three, it was the movie I didn't get to catch here, and I'm really after reading the logline, I really want to see it. It's the Seed of a Sacred Fig. I really want to catch that.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Better Man.
Oh well, no. So, yeah, that's another Neon title. I know that it'll be playing a bunch of festivals as well, but I do want to catch that one sooner rather than later. Thank you all so much for listening. We will be back next week, and till then, see you all next time.